Welcome to the world of scale modeling with Mike Ashe, where techniques, tips, and creativity come alive with dozens of tutorials, projects, tape-up reviews, and picture references to help you build better scale models and enjoy our wonderful hobby. Welcome to part 3 of building the Revell Renwal 1:200 scale USS George Washington with a full interior. In part 3, we'll continue the detail painting, and then I'm going to show you how I did the decals.
I have masked and positioned parts in order to allow me to airbrush a brass color on the underside without having to do two separate airbrushing sessions. So the prop and part of the reactor system, be able to airbrush it in one session and get on the underside of it. These are the torpedoes and another piece of tubing. I'm going to paint this. This will be brass and the rest will be this gray color. And this is the periscope set up here, and I'm going to airbrush that brass too. This is the reactor tubing that's open, and I've taped all around here with small pieces of tape. More torpedoes. And another part of the reactor. Again, small pieces of tape, and this will be brass and all the rest of it will be a flat gray color. So all these parts will be airbrushed brass, and it's going to come out pretty good. So after I airbrush them and let the paint dry, I'm also going to put a coat of Tester's dull coat on here to dull the color of the brass a little bit. And I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. I've got all of the tape removed, and the brass airbrushing came out pretty good. After I was done removing the tape, the other thing I did was I did a little bit of dry brushing around some of the edges with some silver paint just to enhance the parts a little bit, but they came out pretty good. The other thing I did was to tone down the appearance of the brass. I used Tester's dull coat, and that worked really well. And I really like the appearance of the dull brass finish with a little bit of the silver dry brushed around the edges. It really enhances the appearance of some of these parts. And of course, all the torpedoes came out pretty good. So I was trying to figure out what I could do to enhance the appearance of these, of the sleeping quarters, other than what I had done, which was along the edges I dry brushed them to kind of make them pop out a little bit. I wanted to make the upper part of each bunk a different color, but I wasn't quite sure if my hand would be steady enough to do to paint it. So I hit on another idea, and I'll show you how I did this in a second, but I do want you to see that every one of these is exactly the same. And it came out pretty good. I only did the front side because you're not going to see the back side area here once these are in place. So this is how I did it. If you don't have one of these Northwest short line choppers, I highly recommend that you get one, because what I did was I used a .010 inch thick strip of evergreen strip stock by 0.125 inches wide, and all I did was I just chopped these small details. Now, how did I glue them into place? For gluing, I used testers, tube glue, which the way I use this glue is I'll run a bead out here and then carefully take up just a little bit of it, and then I placed a tiny drop on each one of the bulkheads and then carefully positioned the cut parts in place. You can usually get about 3 or 4 of these tiny applications before this glue gets stringy, and when it does, you just take a tissue, wipe away the excess, and do another line and do another 3. So I do use this tester's glue. I wouldn't recommend using super glue here because you're only going to get one shot at it, and you need to be able to carefully slip it in place with tweezers and then adjust it. And super glue isn't going to allow you to do that, but the tester's tube glue gives you about 10 seconds of working time before it starts to get really sticky. So that's how I did it, and I'm really pleased with the way it came out. Got all of the parts spread out here with all of the decals applied, and let me give you some close-ups and show you how they look. I'm going to, in just a minute, as soon as I'm done here, I'll show you how I cut out the decals and punched them out, and the decal sheets that I used. But they came out pretty good. Here's the lower crew quarters. And some of the bulkhead sides. More machinery spaces, where I put some decals here. That I put the decals on first, and then I put the piping on. And it came out pretty good. There's a small decal right here. I really like the effect of decals. This is the lower deck area where the bulkheads are for the crew quarters, so I thought I'd put a clock on the wall, which would be appropriate, and I found a small American flag for the crew quarters. There's the computer or the control consoles for the submarine. It came out pretty good too. And another one. And a tiny console here with a small decal on the bottom. Now, the decals that I used, this was a cut-up decal sheet that I used. It was from the Revell version, which is a slightly smaller scale than the old Renwal kit. However, the decals are a little bit oversized for the scale of that kit, but they're absolutely perfect for everything I just showed you. In addition to that, years ago, Revell came out with a Mercury capsule and Atlas booster kit, and the decal sheet in there has a lot of decal control panel surfaces, and I cut those out and used those too. And you can see that I didn't use them all, but they came out pretty good. And as old as this decal sheet was, it worked out really well. The decals are kind of thick, but that's really good for small decals because you don't want to rip them. So, how did I do it? To cut out the square decals, I use a plexiglass backing like this. You can see all the cuts in it. And I use a sharp number 11 X-Acto blade and my trusty stainless steel sewing ruler. To do the punch outs, I use a Waldron Model Punch Products kit, and this precision punch and die set I bought about 30 years ago. Waldron he sold this years ago and passed away, but you can get these from other aftermarket suppliers. And what you do is you position the round decals underneath between the metal and the plexiglass and just punch it out. And that's how I got that. And all of these decals, all these little round decals right here, dials and clocks. So it worked out good. And lastly, I wanted to show you how did I pick out all the small raised surface details here with paint. Well, how I did it was with a toothpick with a sharpened end. And what I did was I'll shake up the bottle of paint and clean the cap and then turn it over like this. And I dip the tip of the toothpick into the paint, and there's just enough paint on here so that you can pick out all the very, very fine details. And so I have one for red, one for silver. Every color has a toothpick with a sharpened end, and that's how I pick out the details. And I do this on all of my kits, so it works out really, really well. And so now I need to clean the top here. This is how I get my paint to last a long time. You got to have a proper seal, and this is the way I do it. Clean the top, put the top back on. All right, let me go ahead and clear this out, and let me show you the interior of the submarine and the progress I've made on it. So I'll be back with you in just a minute. The submarine itself is just about ready for me to begin the final installation of all of the painted parts. So I've got two of the bulkheads glued in place. I got to put the third one in, and then I can start putting the machinery spaces in. But you can see how I picked out a lot of the details and put a dial decal here, and then punched out some more of these small decals from the decal sheet, and picked out a lot of the raised surface detail, and we are ready to go. It's going to look pretty good when it's done. Not bad for a kit that came out in the early 1960s. A little bit of work and some painting and some diligence in cleaning up the parts. It's going to look pretty good.
Thanks for watching Part 3 of building the Revell Renwal 1:200 scale USS George Washington, and in Part 4 we'll do the final assembly and I'll show you some tricks to ensure a really good finish. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a thumbs up. And when you get the chance, visit our website at www.mikeashley.com, where you're going to find dozens of free PDF downloads, including tutorials, picture references, model galleries, projects, and my 5 original scale modeling books. Thanks to Ben Sound and Videvo for the royalty-free music, and happy scale modeling!